You know what's crazy? Sometimes the person trying to destroy you ends up handing you the keys to their entire kingdom, and they don't even realize it until it's way too late. Sarah Martinez had been with Technova Solutions for 7 years. 7 years of 16-hour days, missed birthdays, and weekends spent fixing code that kept a billion-dollar company running. She wasn't just good at her job, she was the backbone of the entire operation. But here's the thing about being irreplaceable. Sometimes that makes you a target. It was a Tuesday morning when Richard Chen, the CEO, called her into his office. No warning, no meeting invite, just his assistant standing at her desk looking uncomfortable, saying, "Mr. Chen wants to see you now." Sarah grabbed her coffee and walked down the hallway. She'd been in Richard's office hundreds of times. Budget meetings, project updates, celebrations when they landed major clients. She thought maybe this was about the promotion she'd been promised, the one that kept getting pushed back month after month. Richard was sitting behind his mahogany desk, fingers pressed together like he was some kind of movie villain. And next to him was Marcus Chen, Richard's nephew, 23 years old with a degree from a school his uncle donated to and exactly zero real-world experience. "Sarah, have a seat," Richard said. His voice was cold, detached. She sat down, and that's when she noticed the folder on his desk, thick, official-looking, the kind of folder that never means good news. "We're making some organizational changes," Richard started. No small talk, no appreciation for her years of service, just straight to the point. "Your position is being eliminated." Sarah felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "Eliminated? Richard, I single-handedly built the core algorithm that runs our entire platform. I've brought in 3 of our biggest clients. What are you talking about?" Richard didn't even blink. "Business decision, Sarah. We're restructuring the tech department. Marcus here will be taking over your responsibilities." Sarah looked at Marcus, this kid who couldn't code his way out of a paper bag, who asked her last week what Python was and if it had anything to do with snakes. "This is a joke, right?" "I don't joke about business, Sarah." He slid the folder across the desk. "This is your termination agreement. You'll receive 2 months severance, generous considering we could let you go with nothing." She opened the folder, pages and pages of legal language. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from pure rage. "There's a confidentiality clause in there," Richard continued, leaning back in his chair with this smug look on his face. "Very important. You are not to discuss anything about Technova, our processes, our clients, or our technology with anyone. You can't even mention the company name in public forums or social media. Violation results in immediate legal action and recovery of all severance paid." He was enjoying this, actually enjoying destroying her career. "You're silencing me." "I'm protecting my company. Sign it and you walk away with your severance. Don't sign it and you leave with nothing. Your choice." Marcus was smiling, this privileged kid who'd never worked a real day in his life, standing there like he'd earned something. Sarah wanted to flip the desk. She wanted to scream, but she'd learned a long time ago that showing emotion to men like Richard Chen just gave them more power. So she did something that surprised even herself. She picked up the pen and signed every page. "Smart decision," Richard said, standing up to shake her hand. She didn't take it, just gathered her copy of the agreement and walked out. She had 1 hour to pack her desk. 7 years reduced to a cardboard box and a walk of shame past coworkers who wouldn't even make eye contact. They were all scared, wondering if they were next. That night, Sarah sat in her apartment drinking wine and reading through the termination agreement for the 3rd time. She had a friend from law school who now worked at a major firm. She sent her the document. "Can you look at this? Something feels off." Jennifer called her back at midnight. "Sarah, where did you get this?" "My termination agreement." "Why?" Because this is the sloppiest legal document I've seen from a major corporation. It's like they copied a template and didn't even proofread it. Look at Section 7, subsection C. Sarah pulled up the document on her laptop and found the section. It was the part about intellectual property and proprietary technology. She read it once, then twice, then 3 times because she couldn't believe what she was seeing. The clause was supposed to say that all intellectual property created during her employment remained the property of Technova Solutions, standard stuff. But someone made a mistake, a big mistake. What it actually said was that upon termination without cause, all intellectual property created by the employee during their tenure would transfer to said employee, with the company retaining a non-exclusive license for current implementations only. Jennifer, what does this mean? It means that if they fired you without cause, which they did, you now own the intellectual property you created while working there. They can keep using what they have now, but they can't develop it further, can't license it to new clients, and definitely can't sell it without your permission. Sarah's heart was pounding. The algorithm, the core algorithm that runs their entire platform. I created that. I wrote every line of code. Then you own it, Sarah. You own the most valuable asset of $1 billion company. The next morning, Sarah called a lawyer, not just any lawyer, the best intellectual property attorney in the state. She walked into his office with her termination agreement and a flash drive containing documentation of every piece of code she'd written for Technova. Michael Porter had been practicing IP law for 30 years. He'd seen everything. But when he finished reviewing her case, he actually laughed. "Do you know what you have here?" "Tell me I'm not crazy." "You're not crazy. You're now the owner of proprietary technology that powers a company valued at $1.2 billion, and they gave it to you. They literally signed over the rights and paid you severance to do it." Sarah felt dizzy. "What do I do?" "First, we register the copyright in your name immediately. Then we file for a patent on the algorithm. After that, we send Technova a very polite letter informing them of the situation." It took 2 weeks to get everything filed, 2 weeks of Sarah barely sleeping, constantly worried that somehow this would all fall apart, that she'd misread something, that there would be a loophole. But there wasn't. Michael drafted the letter personally. It was professional, concise, and absolutely devastating. It informed Technova Solutions that as of her termination date, Sarah Martinez was the legal owner of the core algorithm that powered their platform. They could continue using the current version under a non-exclusive license as specified in the termination agreement they had drafted. However, any future development, any new implementations, and any licensing to new clients would require negotiation with the IP holder. That would be Sarah. Michael sent it on a Wednesday afternoon. By Thursday morning, Sarah's phone was ringing off the hook. Richard Chan's personal number, the company's legal department, the head of HR. She ignored all of them. By Friday, she received an email requesting an emergency meeting from Richard himself. She agreed, but this time Michael came with her. They walked into Technova's conference room at 2 in the afternoon. Richard was there with 4 lawyers, his CFO, and Marcus, who looked like he was about to cry. "This is ridiculous," Richard said before Sarah even sat down. "You can't possibly think you own our algorithm." Michael opened his briefcase and laid out the documents, copyright registration, patent application, and the termination agreement with Section 7, subsection C, highlighted. "Your document, Mr. Chen. Your lawyers drafted it. Your signature is right here." One of Technova's lawyers grabbed the agreement and started reading. His face went pale. "Richard, we need to talk, privately." They stepped out of the conference room. Sarah could hear raised voices through the door. She sat there, hands folded, trying to look calm even though her heart was racing. When they came back, Richard looked like a different person. The smugness was gone, replaced by something she'd never seen on his face before: fear. "What do you want?" he asked. Sarah had been thinking about this moment for 3 weeks. She'd imagined screaming at him, making him beg, watching him squirm. But revenge wasn't what she wanted anymore. "I want to make a deal," she said. Over the next 6 hours, they negotiated. Sarah's terms were simple. She would license the algorithm back to Technova for their existing operations, but she wanted a seat on the board, 49% equity in the company, and Marcus Chen removed from any position of authority. Richard tried to argue, tried to negotiate down, but his lawyers kept pulling him aside and explaining that Sarah could shut down their entire operation if she wanted to. She could license the technology to their competitors. She could demand royalties on every single transaction their platform processed. She had all the power, and everyone in that room knew it. By midnight, they had a deal. Sarah walked out of Technova Solutions as a 49% owner of a billion-dollar company, the company that had fired her 3 weeks earlier. Marcus was reassigned to a meaningless role in marketing. Richard remained CEO, but now he answered to a board that included Sarah. Every major decision required her approval. The irony was perfect. But here's where the story gets even better. Sarah didn't just take her equity and coast. She used her position to completely transform the company culture. She implemented policies protecting employees from nepotism. She created transparent promotion pathways based on merit, not connections. She tripled the diversity in leadership positions within a year. And that algorithm she owned? She continued developing it, making it better, more efficient, more powerful. Within 2 years, Technova's valuation doubled. Sarah's 49% stake was now worth over $1 billion. She became one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the tech industry. Richard had to watch all of this happen, had to sit in board meetings while Sarah presented strategies that worked, had to answer to someone he'd tried to silence. The best part? That confidentiality clause he'd been so proud of, it only applied to her as an employee. As a board member and major shareholder, she could say whatever she wanted. She started giving interviews, speaking at conferences, telling her story, not for revenge, but to help other people who'd been pushed out, underestimated, or silenced by people in power. Her story went viral. Companies started reviewing their termination agreements. Employees started reading the fine print. Law schools began using her case as an example of why attention to detail matters in legal documents. And Marcus? Last she heard, he was working at his uncle's friend's startup, still trying to figure out what Python was. 5 years after that Tuesday morning, when Richard Chen thought he was destroying Sarah's career, she stood on a stage accepting an award for innovation in technology. In her acceptance speech, she thanked everyone who'd supported her journey. And then she said something that made headlines. "I also want to thank Richard Chen, former CEO of Technova Solutions. If he hadn't tried to silence me, if he hadn't been so arrogant in his cruelty, I never would have read that termination agreement so carefully." Sometimes the biggest opportunities come from people who underestimate you. Richard was in the audience. She could see him sitting there, face red, unable to leave without making a scene. She smiled at him. Not a mean smile, just a reminder that she'd won. Because here's what people like Richard never understand. When you try to destroy someone, when you use your power to crush people you think are beneath you, you'd better make sure you don't hand them a weapon in the process. Richard Chen had drafted a document meant to silence Sarah Martinez forever. Instead, he'd written his own downfall in legal language and asked her to sign it. And she did. Now she owns half of his company, has more money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes, and uses her platform to help other people fight back against workplace injustice. All because of a typo in Section 7, subsection C of a termination agreement that Richard Chin never bothered to read carefully. The craziest part? This could have all been avoided if Richard had just been a decent human being, if he'd valued Sarah's contributions, if he'd promoted her instead of giving her job to his unqualified nephew. But he didn't, and now he gets to live with the consequences every single day. Sarah still goes to board meetings, still votes on major decisions, still develops the algorithm that she owns and Technova licenses from her. And every time Richard has to ask for her approval on something, every time he has to acknowledge her authority, she remembers that Tuesday morning when he thought he was ending her career. She remembers the smug look on his face when he told her to sign the agreement. And she smiles. Because karma isn't just real. Sometimes karma comes with a legal document and a copyright registration. Sometimes the person trying to bury you is actually planting seeds for your garden. And sometimes, just sometimes, the system actually works for the person who deserves it. Sarah Martinez went from a fired employee with a cardboard box to a billionaire board member because someone was too arrogant to proofread a legal document. That's not just justice, that's poetry. If this story taught you anything today, hit that subscribe.
Thank you for watching. Don't miss out on new stories. Make sure to hit that subscribe button.